Before we begin today's session, let us put ourselves in the presence of our Lord. The historian's prayer. Lord of history, we humble ourselves to you in this critical time of our country. Thank you for the gift of knowing our mother country through our history, because it is only in knowing her that we can truly love her. Thank you for the realization that history is not just about the great personages who created and led the nation, but also about the people from the margins whose blood, sweat, toil, and tears built our country, that we may always be sympathetic to the plight of the common man. Grant us a sound mind to discern, with the guidance of your Spirit, what is relevant and true, using our God-given reason. Give us the diligence in finding our sources, the most exhaustive we can get for any given topic. Protect our sources from destruction and neglect, and preserve our national memory. Provide us a critical mind in analyzing the sources, so we may arrive closest to the truth, while recognizing that there can be as many perspectives as it can be. Teach us to be fair to each party, while being faithful to the truth that is in our hearts. Remind us that history, aside from understanding the complexity and diversity of the present, can also have the power to unite us and the power to make us proud of ourselves, so we can build our own identity as a people. Demonstrate to us that our understanding of our own culture enriches our perspective of the past. Help us become a bridge of understanding between the academe and the people, and make us learn the lessons of the past, so we could create solutions to our present problems towards attaining a better future. Despite the gifts that you have given us, may we stay humble and see our work as a way of serving our students, our readers, our publics. Yet, may we see ourselves as bearers of true enlightenment and justice, not enablers of darkness and ignorance. May the way we tell the stories of our past be relevant to our people, that they may learn something from it. May we bring history closer to the people, all for your greater glory and the nation that you have given us. Amen. Thank you very much. You may all be seated. Just, sorry. Well, again, welcome to the, parang totoo, di ba? Let's imagine we are in a real room, in a real conference hall. But thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the International Conference of the International Council for Historical and Cultural Cooperation, Southeast Asia, with the theme Arrivals, Conflict, and Transformation in Maritime Southeast Asia, 1400 to 1800, brought to you by the Philippine Historical Association, Masyarakat Sejawaran Indonesia, Persatuan Sejarah Malaysia, the National Quincentennial Committee, the De La Salle University Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, and the University of San Carlos. We would like to remind everyone that we're currently streamed live on the Facebook pages of the Philippine Historical Association, the National Quincentennial Committee, the LSU Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, National Commission for Culture and the Arts, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Education of the Republic of the Philippines, Local Historical Committees Network, and Project Saysay. Also, University of San Carlos, Cebu, for free in the public interest. For those who are posting this event or anything related to it in your social media, please use the hashtag PHA, hashtag PHA 2020, and hashtag PHA65, because we are also celebrating our 65th year this year. Before we start our session, I would like to remind everyone that what we're doing now, bringing together for the past 8 conferences of the International Consortium of Southeast Asian Historians, is that this is not new. This conference was in line with PHA's pioneering tradition of bringing Asian historians together. And this is a quote from the historian Reynaldo Ileto. In most accounts of the development of Southeast Asian studies, the 1961 Singapore Conference is mentioned as a foundational event. The first conference ever of Southeast Asian historians. In contrast, the 1968 Philippine Historical Association Conference has largely been forgotten or ignored. I think it's time to revisit the 1960 PHA Manila event and perhaps resurrect it as the grandmother of the present conference. The 1961 Singapore Conference can be placed in its proper context as a follow-up and partner of the Manila Conference, with the local participants in both sharing a common goal of decolonizing history. Mukhang yan din yung ginagawa natin in the past few sessions that we are actually reclaiming our stakes in regional history. Of course, it's a continuing process, although matagal na yan. And of course, the 1960 PHA Manila event was held, one of the sessions were held at the House of Representatives of the Philippines, the Congress Hall, which is now where the Spoliarium is located today in the National Museum. So napaka-historic ng Philippine Historical Association, and because of this conference, it gave birth to the International Associations of Historians of Asia, or IAHA, which is still very much active today. So now I will begin. I will be facilitating a session about the very reason why we are all here today. Ito po yung pambansang quincentenaryo o National Quincentennial. So of course, our formal name of the segment would be Sailing Through the Quincentennial, a primer and guide to teaching materials. But I would like to call it Kwentuhang Quincentenaryo. So, of course, to give us a context, what's this Pokemon? What's this Quincentennial? Diba? I would like to invite here to join us the Secretariat, one of the Secretariat of the National Quincentennial Committee, Mr. Christopher Ian Alfonso, who also works for the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Ian, magandang umaga sa'yo. Makasaysayang umaga po.
Magandang umaga, Professor Xiao. Magandang umaga sa ating mga nakikinig, sa ating mga nandito sa webinar.
Sige, wag na tayo magpatumpik-tumpik. Ano ba itong Quincentenaryo? Ano ang ginugunita natin sa pagdiriwang na ito? O pagdiriwang o paggunita, no, na ito?
Okay lang bang mag-share ng ng PowerPoint, Okay. So para mag-guide tayo, So sa 2021, so in-expect natin na may mga sunod-sunod na mga events patungkol sa nangyari 500 years ago na napaka-iconic sa atin, the 1521. So ang estado ay mangunguna sa isang grupo ng mga pangyayari nagugunitain sa 2021, tinatawag itong Quincentennial Commemorations in the Philippines. So at nag-spearhead nito, nag-create ang Office of the President ng komite. Ito yung National Quincentennial Committee, NQC, na ang dalawang major events na kanyang gugunitain on top, ang pinaka priority ay yung Victory at Mactan, and then yung, of course, hindi rin natin pwedeng palampasin yung parte ng Pilipinas sa tagumpay ng sangkatauhan to circumnavigate the world for the first time. So mahaba-haba yung part ng Philippines sa first circumnavigation. It's between March 16 and October 28 of 1521. So yun yung period ng main commemoration. So nakapaloob doon sa meta-narrative na meta-narrative, which is the circumnavigation, yung April 27 o yung the Victory at Mactan. Of course, sa ating mga kababayang Katoliko, mahalaga din ang 2021 dahil ito rin yung ika-500 taon ng Kristyanismo sa Pilipinas, or the introduction of Christianity in the Philippines, to not to be confused with the Christianization of the Philippines, which happened in 1565, or 44 years after the expedition, the expedition in the Philippines. Para lang magkaroon lang tayo ng, in a nutshell, So merong government-led at merong church-led. So maraming na pagbabaliktad o nalilito lalo na sa mga Catholic faithful na ang akala lang ng marami sa ating mga kababayang Katoliko ang 2021 ay devoted lang sa Christianity So hindi lang po Christianity ang focus ng 2021, particularly the government, gaya na nabanggit ko, ay focus siya sa history, culture, and academic, and diplomatic, at sa tourism part. Okay? So yung church-led, of course, nandyan yung CBCP, mayroon silang tinatawag na 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines. Ito yung nangunguna sa mga church-led activities for the 500 years of Christianity. Kahit na magkaiba ang nagpapatakbo ng mga events na to, hindi pa rin inevitable na hindi magkita ang dalawang to, dahil parte ng kasaysayan ng Kristyanismo, parte ng ating pagkatao ang Kristyanismo, parte ng pagiging Pilipino, ng ating mga cultural properties, ating cultural heritage, ang mga simbahang Katoliko, So hindi natin maipagse-separate yung dalawa. Of course, the government will not meddle on the evangelization, ng CBCP, sa kanila yon, So tayo ay guided ng academic, ng cultural, ng historical, sa ibang bansa, ang quincentennial ng ibang bansa, bukod sa historical and cultural ay may dimension ng environmental,
Yes.
ng scientific, because the scientific community regards the achievement of humanity, of circumnavigating the planet for the first time as a breakthrough, and also an achievement of science, because from then on nag-advance ang ating pag-unawa sa ating universe na empirically, although alam na ng tao na bilog ang mundo, pero empirically napatunayan na bilog ang mundo because of the completion of the circumnavigation, So and then
yan, paglilinaw dyan, hindi mo pag-glorify talaga kay Magellan per se itong celebration. Actually, we're just joining an international celebration, di ba? But it is also it's a kudos, or it's a kudos to humankind. And that's why napakaganda ng sinabi mo na yan, kasi it brings into perspective na hindi talaga to dahil colonial mentality tayo, ipinagdiriwang natin si Magellan, but because we're actually joining an international celebration na ang laki ng bahagi natin, why would we miss it? Diba?
Yes. Actually, this international conference we're having now is part of the official activities of the Quincentennial in the Philippines, We are emphasizing the role not only of the Philippines, but of Asia, in Southeast Asia. Dahil ang dahilan ba't nagkaintindihan ng ating mga ninuno at ang expedition ng mga Espanyol, si taga Malacca, si Enrique de Malacca. And then ang dahilan bakit nadaan sa atin ang expedition ay ang Indonesia, the Maluku. Molucas, Actually even our branding, the proper naming, of terms are sensitive, sensitive. Like for example, we Filipinos call the expedition not only as Magellan's expedition, but Magellan Elcano expedition, Dahil ito yung napagkasunduan, hindi naman napagkasunduan, ito yung mas ginagamit ng mga scholar ngayon, the Magellan Elcano expedition, to give credit then both to Magellan and Elcano, And then NHCP and NQC, the Quincentennial Committee is are adhering, or supporting the panawagan of Indonesia na tawagin bilang Maluku ang Molucas, So yun ang official name ng Molucas, Maluku. So we are implementing those terminologies, those proper naming, And even Malacca, we are now using the official name na in-institute ng Malaysian government, Melaka ang ginagamit na rin namin. And also so gusto rin naman din nating i-emphasize na sana maintindihan din at maunawaan ng mga foreigners na sana wag yung tawagin nitong 500 years of discovery of the Philippines, ano.
Yes, yes.
The way we respect your tawag dito, mga idiosyncrasies, like calling it as Magellan Elcan Expedition, calling Malucas as Maluco. So sana maging fair and square, na wag sana na ninyong tingnan din na discovery of the Philippines itong event sa Pilipinas, ano. So yung ito yung mga diplomatic things, ano, na kailangan natin i-consider sa global event na to.
Right. Okay. So again, victory and humanity. Ako gusto ko lang ipaliwanag yung how also nag-evolve yung tema, kasi when it was launched, it was really 500 years of valor and victory. Pero eventually we realized that there's more to, well, of course, the Lapu-Lapu is important, the victory in Mactan is important, but also there is another angle. And of course, syempre, pragmatic tayo, we are also a member of the international community. And we want to also show the side of the story that we did not kill. Hindi naman natin agad pinatay yung mga dayuhan, ano, na pumunta dito ng kara-karaka. No? There's something that happened in between. But, when we welcome them, may nangyari talaga doon na something. I hope you can explain this before we go to the next question, Ian. Yung humanity aspect.
Yes. Actually, we included humanity in the team. Professor Xiao is correct. The original, when we launched the Quincentennial Commemorations in December of 2018, the team, we carried actually the original team, the 500 years of valor and victory.
Yes.
So when the presidential communications, when the tourism promotion board enter in the subcommittee on communications and branding, they requested the committee if they can consider the international aspect of the commemoration. So we merged the valor and victory in one, which victory, and then we included humanity to emphasize the compassion, the magnanimity extended by our ancestors when the Magellan Elcan expedition reached the Philippine shore, particularly in Samar, on March 18 of 1521. Well, they arrived in the Philippine shore on March 16, 1521, but the first contact between our ancestors and these foreigners happened on March 18, 1521.
Right.
And the beauty, the inspiring thing on that first meeting, our ancestors did not attack, very typical to our Visayan ancestors, yung the culture of mga pangangayaw, or the culture of sea raiding, but they actually when they discovered, actually our ancestors discovered the sickly, the almost dying,
yes.
the hungry, starving,
right.
There were 4 months. They were almost 4 months in the Pacific,
Right.
They could not see any island to anchor at, Actually, they saw 2 islands in the Pacific, in their second month of voyage from South America. At unfortunately, those 2 islands were infested by sharks. And then the next, and then they were already eating the leather tents, the ropes, rats, and then they already, their food were already spoiled, and then they had no potable water,
fresh water. Yes.
And then in Guam they met, unfortunately they had a misunderstanding in Guam.
Right.
And then that incident in Guam prompted them not to land in the island of Samar, because Magellan was expecting that there were our ancestors would attack them, like what happened in Guam. So on March 16, they decided to anchor near an island named Suluan, And then because Suluan was inhabited, so Magellan instructed his crew to look for another island that was uninhabited, and that was Homonhon, an island next to Suluan. And there in Homonhon, they landed their sick their crew stricken, their scurvy stricken crew.
Right.
And then they hunted a pig, and then they tried eating some fruits that were not familiar with them. I don't know
Right.
if anybody from the crew was poisoned, but that was March 17, and then they discovered potable water. That's why they up until 19th century, the alternative name for Homonohon given by the Spaniards since 1521 was Aguada, in memory of the potable water
yes.
because water was important to them. 4 months they had no potable water, and then their thirst was the two springs from Homanhon, in Homanhon, that hydrated them. And then on the following day, there was this curious ruler from the distant island, the Suluan, and that ruler himself uh, went to Homanhon and met Magellan. And then Magellan instructed his crew, do not move until
Right.
I say so. And then Magellan suddenly embraced the ruler, unfortunately the unnamed ruler from Suluan,
Right.
and then he described that ruler the Baxter Codex later, the 1590s would depict and describe our ancestors as
Right.
tattooed, and then they're wearing what they call this, silk cloth, and then
Mm-hmm.
their ornaments were made of gold, and
Right.
then Magellan asked the ruler if they could have if they could bring in food, and the ruler responded positively. They brought everything they had at that time, and then the succeeding days they brought more provision, so
Without understanding each other, right? They
yes,
were using
they were just
signs.
using hand gestures,
Yes.
well, probably because that ruler was not familiar with the Malay language, because Enriquez was already was do not forget
Right.
that Enrique is important part of this event, and then Enrique would understand only, would be able to converse with our ancestors only when they reach the island of Mazawa,
Right.
because according to Pigafetta, the chronicler of the expedition, our rulers then were polyglots. They
Right.
knew different languages,
Yes.
So and fortunately, Malay was a widely spoken language in
In
Southeast
Southeast
Asia.
Asia, yes.
Actually, if as early as AD 900, the Laguna Copperplate inscription discovered in Laguna, it is written in Old Malay. So as early
Right.
as AD 900, the Malay language was already widespread, even in as far as Luzon, So what more in the Visayas, So, and even one of the survivors of the expedition, Hines de Mapra, recorded that the Malay language was widely spoken in this region pertaining to the Visayas, And then there were
Right.
also traders, the traders this Muslim trader in Cebu, whom the Raja of Cebu, Humabon, used as his personal interpreter with Enrique de Malacca. So that's it. That's the humanity aspect of the quincentennial commemorations,
Which basically shows us that first of all, the what we call Filipino hospitality actually stems from pakikipagkapwa, right? You see a hungry person, you feed them, and notwithstanding if the person is from your own town or from your own country, but even if it's a foreigner, you welcome them and you give them food. And I also think that this is also because, and we are highlighting this in the Quincentennial, I'm quite conscious that we should highlight this, the sophistication, yung pagiging sophisticado ng ating mga ninuno noong panahon na yon. And remember that commemorations, if you had 1961 centennial commemorations of the birth of Rizal or Bonifacio or Aguinaldo, you highlight the heroes, but we haven't highlighted in the past commemorations where, when you commemorate, there is a peak in conversation and interest of the people. Hindi pa na-highlight out yung ating mga ancestors. So I think that's the beauty of this quincentennial celebration is we highlight lapu-lapu, we highlight our prowess, the bagani, the one who fights for your own land, di ba? And of course, yung tinatawag natin na humanity, which is, pakikipagkapwa-tao ng Filipino, which I believe is encapsulated in the term bagani. Bagani as a warrior who is also considered a hero during that time. So, allow me, Ian, if it's okay, that we share the anthem of the quincentennial celebrations. I think it's important that we also discuss this later, Ian. Na that there is a song for this na pwedeng gamitin ng mga teachers sa pagtuturo ng quincentennial at ng Philippine history. No? So sana po pakinggan yung mabuti itong awitin na ito. This was of course one of the projects of the quincentennial, yung Philpop, collaborating with Ryan Cayabyab. Nagkaroon sila ng parang workshop ng gagawa ng mga kanta on the quincentennial, which can be found in Spotify. But the one that was selected was Bagani by Roel Rostata. So I'm going to share now the song Bagani. maraming salamat. Now, Ian, what do you think of ang ganda nito kasi remember that we are in the time of pandemic and we are in the midst of celebrating one of the important milestones in our history, which is the victory in Mactan and our humanity. And then we are talking about heroism. Yeah? People should remember na itong quincentenaryo ay tungkol sa kabayanihan. Heroism, di ba? Alam mo yung gustong-gusto ko iyan na kanta dyan. And sometimes I don't know, the song is really pop, no? But it makes me cry sometimes to think of the lyrics, di ba? Halina't ating isulong at ligawan ang magandang bukas. Di ba? Ikaw at ako magkasama tayo sa lubungin ng kinabukasan. So, in many ways, the Quincentennial is also about our collective aspirations as a people. Di ba? Reflected in our history of struggle, heroism, victory, and tragedies. But that we will prevail.
Yes. Actually, I would like to take this opportunity to invite our participants here in the webinar and also those who are watching us on online to kindly search on Spotify the playlist, the 500 years Philippines. That's the name of the playlist. So you can find there the entire playlist produced by PhilPop with NCCA and NHCP, funded by NCCA and NHCP. The one who led the search for these songs was no other than national artist Ryan Cayabyab.
Right.
And then the OPM are known OPM artists who actually all of the songs were composed and written by young people, by young Filipinos, So even Royal Rosata is among those young composers, young songwriters composing the album, and we also included in that Spotify playlist the songs used during the Mangayaw. Anyway, that's a different project, but it is also it is quite interesting to hear how these two groups produce songs for the 500 years. The one as you have acknowledged, it's more the first group of Mr. C are pop
Right.
pop musicians, and then the other group more ethno musical, the ethno
Right.
medyo pagka-ethnic, the ethnic sounds, because because Mangayaw is in celebration of the world of our ancestors, and we are observing this month, the IP month, the Indigenous Peoples Month, and Commission sa Wikang Filipino advised NHCP if we could conduct consultation with the National Commission on the Indigenous Peoples, So we went to Agusan del Norte, where we attended this meeting of the datos from the Caraga region. Actually, the word Bagani is more associated with the Manobos, the
Right.
Manobos of Mindanao. So we actually, before we use the song and we publicize the song, we ask first the blessings of the datos. They signed a document allowing the government to use as a title the word Bagani. So, and you're right, Kong Xiao. You're right, Prof. Xiao. Bagani encapsulates the transcendental spirit of 500 years.
Right.
Throughout the 500 years, we shown the world, we shown the humanity how compassionate we are. We're not just referring to the heroes, to our heroes, and our heroic heritage. We are also emphasizing in the song that whoever you are, as long as you are a fellow humankind, we are here to extend help, to extend assistance. So actually, the spirit of humanity in the 500 years also recognizes, acknowledges the consistent history of the Filipino people in
Right.
In accepting refugees,
Right.
and even ako, as per Dr. Escalante, the chairman of the LCP, is emphasizing 20th we did not just accept refugees in the 20th century, the White Russians, the Jews during
Jews.
World War II, even during the Spanish period, during the Spanish period, of course, under the auspices of the Spanish administrators, when Emperor Hideyoshi banished the Christian faithful, of Japan, Manila accepted them, during the Boxer Rebellion, according
Right.
to Dr. Escalante, we accepted a number of Chinese, to the Philippines in the 19th century, and we are consistent here, in this heritage of being one with the world, But also we do not also, of course, while we celebrating these attributes, this positive side of the quincentennial, and I think Dr. Jobbers would expound on this later, that
Yes.
we are not setting aside the impact of the 1521 in generations in the generations hence, because
Yes.
of course, the Magellan Elcano expedition propelled the interest of Spain, to conquer
Right.
the Philippines. Of course, we need to acknowledge that, we are not whitewashing the history,
Right.
we acknowledge na colonization was indeed had a negative impact on our on our ancestors, but I think Dr. Jobbers will expound on that, because for the anthropologists, when the event is quite there is a multiple layers, of event of histories, we are we must look into, and even Director Ana Labrador of the National Museum
Right.
also aired that concern, na National Quincentennial Committee should not only look on the brighter side, we need to emphasize the other side, of what would happen next in the next 44 years, which was the colonization of the Philippines, na we need to assess what had been lost,
Yes.
and then and then our being and becoming, as a Filipino, what we are now, is product of what happened in the past.
For me, I think that it is important. I wrote this actually in a Manila Times column. I've been writing about the quincentennial in my columns. That this is the centennial is not ought to be celebrated like glorifying our colonialism, but recognizing that it happened. No, there were heritage that were appropriated. May inangkin tayong mga bagay na galing sa Europa. This is still part of our identity, right? Now, what my question would be, yes, you're now emphasizing we're not celebrating our pagkasakop, our the hindi natin celebrate. We commemorate what happened, but we do not celebrate our pagkasakop.
And not even
diba?
Yes, and even we're not emphasizing that we are
Right.
welcoming, we are celebrating or welcoming in spirit Magellan. We do not take that that aspect.
Yes.
We just see, actually that's the very reason, the very concern of Professor Albert Ocampo yesterday.
Right.
We should see 1521 as it happened, because it was not about colonization, but it actually propelled.
It propelled, yes.
It was a prelude to the colonization, and we should not romanticize that.
Right.
Well, there were scholars who would say, "Oh, this is 1521 should not be seen as colonization," but that propelled, that was the prelude, So we should not take that, we should not take that down,
But I like it that we have commemorations, the not at all, because commemorations are openings to discourses. Nag-uusap-usap kasi tayo pag may mga ganito eh. So, ngayon, at least, di ba, pinag-aawayan ngayon. Should we celebrate the quincentennial? We shouldn't, should we? But people are talking. Di ba? Now, I will go to the next point, which is, so how do we now celebrate a quincentennial na ang hina-highlight talaga natin ay hindi yung pagkasakop sa atin, but we are actually talking about our ancestors.
Yes. Chairman Escalante yesterday in his welcome remarks, he emphasized that we are maximizing this global platform to advance a cause. The government has an agenda, and that is to dispel misconceptions that our ancestors were savages. So well, we are appreciating what was then, what was the world then, but if you will see the illustrations, how the foreigners depicted our ancestors,
Right.
either as American Indian with feathers on their head,
Or
or
blacks.
blacks,
Yes.
so we are using this event to emphasize, and also for the Filipinos, na to revisit the pre-colonial history of the Philippines, that we were educated that history began, that Philippine history began in 1521, which is not, so before 1521 we were already had a flowering connection with our Asian neighbors,
Right.
and even one of the events cited by Chair Escalante yesterday, na you will be surprised what that the admiral of the Sultan of Brunei encountered by the remaining crew of the Magellan Elcano expedition into the Brunei Bay was the Prince of Luzon. And eventually, there is this chronicler, Father Aganduro Muris, in early 1600s, claiming that Prince of Luzon was actually Raja Matanda of Manila in 1571, 50 years after,
Yes.
and then these are the things, 1521, the 1521 event in the Philippines, actually it is a well recorded event, and the Philippines, we can maximize those materials, those documentations in Portugal, in Spain, about the to reconstruct our early history, and also
Right.
to corroborate also the existing narratives by the Chinese annals, na so that we are not we are not alien in our own history,
Great. Right.
so that's the reason why we are why we chose as a team during the 500-day countdown last December 14, 2019, through the assistance of different theater directors across the Visayas, performers. They converge in Cebu to for to ano to uh, for this cultural presentation about the early culture and society of our ancestors, and then also the balangays actually was highlighted during the 500-day countdown,
I was
so
there. I saw
diba
them.
diba because actually when we will issue a map, a circumnavigation map, and there alongside with the two ships, that are the three ships which arrive in the Philippines, we included the balangays in the Visayas, because during the journey of the expedition they were accompanied by the balangays of the Raja of Mazawa, and then
Oh, by the way,
also
before
yes,
we go to the next, I'd like to emphasize that the Mangayaw, if you want to watch Mangayaw, it's in the YouTube of the National Quincentennial Committee, Republic of the Philippines. So you just subscribe to that YouTube page. Later on, Ian will show us some samples. Yes.
yes, and
Continue,
then
sir.
yes, and then this is also the opportunity that the national government will fulfill the law declaring the shrine, the Lapu-Lapu Shrine, the Liberty Shrine as a shrine in the 1969, 1968,
Right.
it should have a shrine and then a museum, So we're just waiting for the passage of the General Appropriation Act for 2021. If this will push through, the Lapu-Lapu Memorial Shrine and Museum. So it is a declared shrine, but it doesn't have any structure enshrining a memory, it's just it's just a monument, so
Right.
unlike the existing national shrines of the government, like the Quezon Memorial Shrine, Mabini Shrine, Pinaglabanan Shrine, Rizal Shrine, they have structures, enshrining the memory of the honoree, of those honorees. And then yet Lapu-Lapu doesn't have any, so we are constructing this this shrine. And I think Jerwil can play the walkthrough of for us to have a better appreciation of the project. The NHCP prepared a walkthrough of the shrine. So here it is. Museums about the event, and then alongside with the shrine, one of the major projects of NQC is to is to open for the first time a museum of Philippine early history in Butuan.
Wow.
In Butuan. So for the longest time, it is the National Museum of the Philippines that is hosting the pre-1521 collection and memory of our ancestors.
Right.
The National Museum and NHCP agreed in one board meeting, because Director General Jeremy Barnes is part of the committee of the commissioners of the NHCP. They will develop this Museum of Philippine Early History based on the historical documents, the pre-Hispanic, because most of our I think a big part of our history is based on the Hispanic sources, So we are now highlighting here in the museum the pre-Hispanic sources, spanning from the AD 900 Laguna carpet inscription, and then the Chinese annals, the Portuguese accounts,
yes,
about our ancestors before
mentioned
1565.
Butuan,
Yes, they mentioned
the
Butuan,
Chinese annals.
the Chinese annals, So we are dedicating a museum on this, and it will be housed, it is planned to be housed in the old Butuan City Hall,
Mm-hmm.
So this is just an artist rendition of the restored Butuan City Hall, old Butuan City Hall. It is currently being used by the PNP Butuan, And then I think they already vacated the structure to give way for the restoration of the old Butuan City Hall. So, and that is those are the projects highlighting the Filipino point of view of the Quincentennial,
And recognizing Butuan's role at that time as one of the centers of Southeast Asia at that time. Oh, anyway, so there would be, of course, if you want to go to if you want to see the details of that, puntahan nyo po yung National Quincentennial FB and the nqc.gov.ph, which is the site of the NQC. For example, there would be, yun, yung mga monuments contest and all. But my question would be, and this is my last before I go to Sir Jobbers, and then you will join us later still. I would like to ask, the pandemic happened, I know I'm quite privy of the plans because, I'm part of one of the writers of the Quincentennial. But because of the pandemic, that's supposed to be big celebration in April 27, which is the day of the Quincentennial, is parang syempre on hold, we cannot really do it yet. Walang kalinawan yan eh. So in the time of pandemic, how do we, shall we say, make people interested in the Quincentennial? What are your initiatives? Now, we can still continue to celebrate it even while social distancing in this crucial time.
Yes. The good thing about our time, we are now in the age of social media. So social media is one of the one of the great one of the factors that we that still we make we want to be more relevant on social media. So we are hosting almost every week like different lectures about the Quincentennial. Actually, we just finished a lecture on the dogs of our ancestors, the role of the dogs,
Oh yes.
Even those things, we are highlighting that, that our dogs were already part of our ancestors, and then I think 50% of the budget of the National Quincentennial Committee was reverted to the treasury for the for the use for the bayanihan to heal as one act in support of that. And then we actually, one of the major projects of the committee was Dr. Escalante chose to retain one of the major projects, and this is the marking of the route of the expedition in the Philippines, because DFA is now joining Spain and Portugal in lobbying in the UNESCO to inscribe the route of the first circumnavigation of the world as World Heritage Site. So this is one of the projects in this pandemic, during the pandemic, we pushed through, so we identified the sites along the route, and then and as much as possible we favored the Filipino, the Philippine, which is this is the the wisdom on wisdom of the cracks in the parchment curtain, as dimension espoused by
William Henry Scott. Yes.
This is the this is how the memorial looks like,
Wow.
It will bear a historical marker narrating the episode, again Filipino-centric episode of the event in a particular site, and then we are depicting the on the barrelip, on the marble barrelip, the episode happened in that particular site, this is where you can we incorporated the Filipino-centric point of view of the event. If you will see, our ancestors were not are no longer American Indian like or black, so we appropriated the documentation thanks to the Baxter Codex, and then the other accounts, the tattooed, they describe them as tattooed, and then their attires, and then here's the episode. Look at the episode of the Humanhon episode, So the Humanhon episode, the unnamed Raja or unknown ruler from Suluan looks majestic, looks regal, and then the clothes of Magellan are tattered, of course, to emphasize that they bear almost a year, or more than a year of voyage, and then the Limasawa episode, the blood compact in Mazawa, so if for next year, of course, because of the
Right.
because of the they should not be there should April 27, 2021 is the equivalent of the 1998, the decade of the Philippine Centennial.
Exactly.
Which we favored the June 12, 1898, the proclamation of Philippine independence. So we originally planned a grand military parade replicating the what happened in the Credo Grandstand on June 12 in Cebu. Everything was was downplayed, downgraded to just a simple replaying in the shrine next year, and then there will be a reenactment, a short of reenactment, and a small military honors, military parade in the
Right.
Liberty Shrine, because we should not take we should not set aside the fact that Lapu-Lapu is one of the icons of our of the military service in the
Right.
Philippines. It was an inspiration to our revolutionaries. Evidence to this is this poem of Emilio Jacinto invoking the memory of Lapu-Lapu in 1895, where has the blood of Lapu-Lapu gone, yun ang that's the line in the in that particular poem of Jacinto. And even during the proclamation of Philippine independence on June 12, 1898, Lapu-Lapu and in the memory of Mactan were invoked during the proclamation. So that is the reason why we are emphasizing the role of Mactan in 2021. So this is already announced by Chairman Escalante 2 weeks ago during his cabinet report with Secretary Andanar, that on the evening we are trying, the NHCP and NCCA are trying to open finally the Metropolitan Theater. So there's still uncertainty because of the timetable of finishing the restoration of the Metropolitan Theater.
Right.
And on the evening of the D-Day on April 27,
Right.
there will be a cultural presentation about about Philippine history in the there in the
Wow.
Metropolitan Theater. So again, it is still uncertain, but
Yes.
it was already announced by Chairman Escalante. At least they are inspired to finish the restoration of the Metropolitan Theater in time for the 500 years next year.
And the
Mactan,
possibility that
Yes.
there would be something on
Yes.
D-Day.
And then
Yes.
by the way, the event will not finish on April 27. There are
Yes.
still succeeding events until we finish the unveiling of the markers on October 28 of 2021 in Sarangani Island.
And also the great international conference on the Quincentennial is actually after D-Day next year.
Yes, it is. It will be in October 2021. This will be I think siguro this PHA conference 2.0.
You're right.
And what is unique to on that international conference we are planning, for the first time we gathered all together the major historical societies, the Philippine National Historical Society, PHA, ADHICA, the
Department of
the
Histories.
history departments
Yes.
of the country, and even the Church Historians Association of the Philippines, and even the Bangsamoro, the Bureau on Cultural Heritage,
Right.
the counterpart of NCCA and NHCP in the BARM region, and actually Director Ardan Sali, of BARM is with us here, in this webinar,
Wow,
So,
thank you, sir.
Yes. So it will be
Assalamualaikum.
yes. The event in 2021 will be a mix of cultural, historical, and educational. And there are a lot more. There are a lot more preparations for 2021 exhibits, which
Yeah.
I cannot detail now.
Well, just follow the Facebook page of National Quincentennial Committee, and I'm also sure that the Luneta would also be a big part of the Quincentennial. Our friend Ian, Margot Vanessa De Crepito of the National Parks Development Committee is actually watching us today. So hello, shout out. We are also being joined by Gemma Cruz Araneta, the very first if I'm not mistaken. Southeast Asian International Beauty Queen, Miss International of 1964. First Filipina and first Southeast Asian International Beauty Queen. Hello, Ma'am Gemma.
Yes, one of the reasons why we should celebrate the triumphs
Oh,
in Philippine
yes.
history,
Oh,
and one of this is the triumph of Ma'am Gemma.
yeah, the first Southeast Asian Beauty Queen became a heritage and history advocate. Okay, thank you, Ian. We'll join. You'll join me later. But before we go to our next guest, alam natin na if there's one person, one performer, one icon, cultural icon, that ingrained Magellan's story and Lapu-Lapu story in the minds of the Filipinos for the longest time, was a guy named Yoyoy Villame. Now, of course, he made a funny song. It was really a joke, His Magellan song was a joke. But people read it, people talk about it, it is taught in schools. So what we did was we created a video of the Magellan song, which you will hear. It's funny. The graphics are funny, but it tells the story. Sa baba nun, in the subtitles, we put what really happened. So the Magellan song now becomes a teaching tool based on this video that we made with the National Quincentennial Committee and Adrow. I would also like to recognize, before we play the song, the president of the Philippine Historical Association is here with us today, Dr. Maria Luisa T. Camagay. Makasaysayang umaga, madam. So now we're going to, kita nyo yan Magellan. Sabi ko nga dyan, if I would be given the chance to write the song, ang ilalagay ko dyan, on March 16, 1521, when Magellan was discovered by Philippines. Kasi Filipino-centric, di ba? So anyway, we will now put Lapu-Lapu, because he's the central figure of the Quincentennial, into perspective. We are joined here by a public anthropologist. He's an anthropologist by profession, and he is also doing public work as an intellectual. I can relate to him because we're doing the same in history. And he is teaching at our partner school. Supposedly, we're supposed to be there in their school in Cebu if the pandemic did not happen. But we're pleased that he is here with us from the University of San Carlos Museum. This is Jose Eleazar R. Bersales, PhD, Dr. Jobbers Bersales. Makasaysayang umaga po sa atin. Mayong buntag.
Mayong buntag, Xiao. Good morning.
Maraming salamat.
Good morning to all
Good morning.
the participants also.
I actually, supposedly, this is like, kaya may 2-hour section ako dito sa conference. It is because of the field trip. It is the tradition that the third day of the conference is the field trip. But we cannot do a field trip now. And supposedly, in our plan, si Sir Jobbers will guide us to San Carlos Museum. I will also be with you in the other places. And sabi ko, we should. I always wanted to be with Sir Jobbers to work with him. So we will do it now, even with the pandemic. And we want to talk about Lapu-Lapu. And you're very passionate, one of the public figures in Cebu who's very passionate about the story of Lapu-Lapu. And my question here is, we really do not know much about him. So what do we know about him? Yung talagang alam lang natin, because there's so many myths about him. What do we really know about him? And what are the sources of this knowledge?
Let me wear my thinking cap.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Wala, actually. If you go to the historical source, Pigafetta and Maximilianos Transilvanos and all those secondary documents written out of the Chronicle of Pigafetta and the interviews of the survivors, he's barely mentioned. He's not mentioned at all. I mean, only Pigafetta names him. Si Lapu-Lapu.
Not even Lapu-Lapu. It's Si Lapu-Lapu.
Si Lapu-Lapu, somebody was pointing to that guy, si Lapu-Lapu. Yeah. And you can see the difficulty, because even the city of Lapu-Lapu has a dash on its name. That's a mistake.
Right.
That was made by the law when it was made into a city.
So we
So
cannot
that's-
change it.
Yeah, well, they can amend the law to remove the dash, because it sounds like a nickname. It sounds like Ling Ling,
Boy,
Sang
ano,
Sang,
Junjun.
Jun Jun. Yeah, I wrote about that it should be changed, because the Chinese do that also. They double names as a kind of term of endearment. And
Right.
maybe that's how we endear Lapu-Lapu also.
Yeah, and this
That's one. We don't know anything except that Pigafetta said that he defied Magellan. He will recognize Spanish sovereignty, but will not bow to Humabon, because according to him, Humabon is of lower status in the rank of the chiefs.
oh wow, that's shocking for many of us to hear that he would actually have been more friendly with Magellan had it been that Magellan first got cahoots or went cahoots with Humabon, his arch enemy. So that means also that in a way, and this is where of course all the contention happens, that there are people who say that actually Magellan was a pirate and that he was not, of course, it was not, he did not really defend Mactan, but Magellan became a victim of an internal conflict between Humabon and Lapu-Lapu.
Well, if we go by the letter that was sent by the King of Spain to the, I think the Loaiza expedition, they were looking for the survivors of the Magellan expedition, and Loaiza carried a letter from the king to be delivered to Lapu-Lapu in 1525 as a way of asking for forgiveness, for apologies for him for coming into a local fight. Sa Pilipinas, it's the same. Pag magpagitna ka, mamamatay ka. That's what
Right.
happened with Magellan. He stood in between two opposing forces on a very simple, probably local, very simple fight that he had no understanding of. And all he wanted was to show, hubris. I have God with me. I have all the... But Yoyoy was right. He had the guns and he had the armor. And he had an armory of cannons. So that's what emboldened me. I'm sure to you, you just watch Humabon. We go to battle. Don't join, just watch from a distance.
Watch and learn.
Watch and learn. And he didn't realize geography is important, geology is important. Mactan, at Punta Engaño, where the battle happened, has a very long tidal flat. The Americans did not learn from that also in Vietnam. Never go to
Right.
war unless you know the terrain.
Yes. Well, in many ways, that is reflected on why the Americans are still interested with the what they call visiting forces agreement, because they learn a lot from that. It really, if you go to the roots of that, it's really Lapu-Lapu strategy, know your terrain. But for me, I think just for the sake of discussion, that doesn't diminish the importance of Lapu-Lapu, because Lapu-Lapu is, I think, I was rephrasing it in many ways. I was saying that Lapu-Lapu, first, of course, he demonstrated Filipino ingenuity in battle, strategy, which is, it was described that they came on three sides. So there was the triangle strategy there na kinulong sila like a, right. And also, Lapu-Lapu defied the pakikialam of the foreigners in internal affairs.
Yeah, that's, Well, if you look at it from the point of view of natives who were trading with all kinds of islands, there was an active trading here. They were used to foreigners.
Right.
That we can say, not in the sense of white men, but people who spoke a different language. So at an anthropological perspective, you have a group of islands all over, including down to Borneo and all that, who could communicate at least at the level of selling things. So they were familiar with stories. And Maluco was already part of the Portuguese already by then in 1521. So they would have been informed well ahead that there were white people in certain islands.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
like the story. I like the theme of the quincentennial because it actually tells us something about Filipinos. You know, you come here in peace, we will welcome you with humanity.
Yeah.
You know, you start meddling with our affairs without knowledge of our culture and without knowledge of our sensibility. Sure, then I'm sorry, it's of course I'm
Or
joking.
yeah,
but, you know, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it is clear in the Pigafetta Chronicle that Colombo, when he said, you go to Cebu if you're looking for provisions, it's very clear that he delayed the trip. They waited for him in Baybay. The Spanish
Right.
fleet, the boats, waited for Colombo because Colombo was biding his time. He was still
Right.
sending signals to Humabon, prepare for battle in case these people want battle. So they were familiar with these things. So this was, in terms of international geopolitics today, they had that kind of level now. We should defend our territory. We should prepare to defend our territory. So that's,
And
yeah, but we know so little about Lapu-Lapu. That's why so much is invented of him.
correct. I will go to that later, but you know, that's why it's interesting to just put Lapu-Lapu in this context and you just understand the whole story. Remember that, you know, in the Philippines was not a big player in Southeast Asia at the time. We were one of the centers of the Southeast Asian trade route to China. And that's why, you know, I'm always telling the Mindanaoans and the Visayans, you know, before the coming of the Spaniards, but the center, not just, the center was that area, Mindanao, Visayas, Celebes, you know, this is the center of
basically,
Southeast Asia. And
I think
trade.
if you look at the Fujian Coast and all the studies done on the trading in Southeast Asian and Chinese ceramics, they would go through the periphery of the western side, where we're fighting now with China. No, you're talking
Right,
of
exactly.
Palawan, Mindoro, the eastern side, or the western side of Luzon, because that would be where the winds would bring them.
That's why we
And so that
understand.
part is very clear in the Maritime Trading Network.
That's why we
So
understand.
this period, yes.
We understand the present by looking at the past. Now, before we go to the controversy, so what we really know is this, that Lapu-Lapu was a leader in Mactan, at Mactan Island, and you know that he when feelers were sent to him about being friends with Magellan, he refused and said and Magellan and the people of Magellan warned him. And you really do not realize what goes lost into the translation with the negotiations. But Lapu-Lapu, the people of Mactan said that although you have guns and all of that, we have spears that were pinatibay ng apoy. And of course,
poison.
And poison.
Poison arrows.
We really do not know if what Lapu-Lapu's age was. We really do not know if he was even there in the battle. But what is important is he was the leader of this resistance.
Yes.
Now, of course, there would be other myths that is not included in what we know. Well, for example, I have two things in mind. One, that he was really a pirate. And number two, that he actually came from somewhere. Of course, you can discuss that, no? He did not come from Mactan. He came somewhere.
Well, I'm speechless when it comes to stories like this. Because, I mean, we are academics. We are trained to understand only that which we can source. At the level of anthropology, we go directly to people, we interview, we live with them. At the level of history, we go through documents and triangulate these documents to see which is a lie and which is the truth.
Right.
So where does the story come from that he's a pirate? These are later inventions. These are called accretions. And this is like in archaeology, my main profession. These are like accretions to a pot. You have an earthenware pot and you have accretions because it's been down there under the sea, and you have barnacles. So these things are barnacles to the real shape of the pot. Do they add to our understanding of the pot that we have? No, they are not. But why do they happen? Because so little is done. And the problem with social media is there's so many gullible people. They believe what someone posts immediately. The Battle of Mactan happened in Mactang, Camotes, because there's so much excavation there. And according to those two TV shows in the 90s, two archaeologists said that it must have happened there. So then you have a group of people believing, and that's their thing. and fighting it over in social media. But these are later accretions to the original shape. People must understand that because Lapu-Lapu killed Magellan, he does not have a space in the narrative of the Spanish Empire. He's the one that prevented the colonization. And Ma'am Gemma Cruz Araneta's question is, what would have happened if Magellan was successful? Then there would have, the colonization of Spain, of the Philippines by Spain would have been forwarded by 44 years.
Yes,
it would have been
exactly.
fast. In fact, Loaiza came, Saavedra, Villalobos, they all came back to really look for these islands, despite the cost. This was costly. There was a private sponsor of the trip. Lugi siya. He lost in that,
Yes, exactly.
because only one boat came with spices from the Malocco. So it was a loss, but the Spanish were intent on defeating the Portuguese and finding the source for spices. So Lapu-Lapu is just incidental to the story. So it's not. It's like the women in Pigafetta's chronicle. They're absent. They're not named.
Right.
Imagine we have Humabon's wife. She's not named. We know her as Juana, and everyone makes stories like her name was Bulakna. Her name was Umamay. Her name, there are all kinds of names because of the absence of text. And so we have what Resil calls the traditions and legends and the actual source.
Right.
And so as historians and as anthropologists, this is our dilemma, I think. You look at Yo-Yo that you played. More people take Yo-Yo's song seriously. I mean, he did capture the
essence.
Of the entire event. No? But there was no doctor, of course. So there was a doctor in Magellan's.
You know what I think? You raised a very good point that when in the absence of something, people make myths, and that's why disinformation happens. And also, I think perspective plays because those that say that Lapu-Lapu was a pirate and a rogue, as compared to Humabon, the legitimate leader, are actually relying on Spanish sources. Of course, who would be so against and so will demonize Lapu-Lapu? But anyway, so that discounts some of the tales that he actually came from the south. That is not substantiated. I think the Cebuanos and the people in Mactan were eating pork, so he cannot be Muslim.
But this was taken seriously apparently because the former mayor of Cebu was actually made an honorary sultan of Cebu by a Muslim group here 20 years or 15 years ago. And that's how these accretions, these inventions of history are taken seriously by so many people, by non-historians and non-academics. So we must be losing ground. Our truth-telling must be losing ground because many more people on social media believe that one. Lapu-Lapu came from Sumatra. His mother-in-law was a member of the Sumatran royal family, that we were part of the Srivijaya. The word Visayas comes from Vijaya, and in fact, it's Visjaya, according to Bayer, and then later Zaide. No evidence whatsoever. And so it is a longing to be part of the Malay world, I think.
Right.
For us. Because if you look at the map, the Philippines are a group of islands that's at the periphery of the entire trading routes.
Yeah.
You have to thank the Fujianese, the Chinese, for passing through us around the Yuan period or the Ming. But before that, these tradings were going on down south in the Muslim world. And so this longing to be part of that world is very strong among people, among non-historians. And we seem like in an ivory tower. Nobody takes us serious. Nobody takes what we're saying. No, Magellan, Pigafetta never said he was Muslim or that Lapu-Lapu came from this place or that place. And yet many people believed in that.
Right. But now I think the question should be, because a lot of people are saying Lapu-Lapu is not the hero of the Philippines. There was no Philippines at that time. he really did not fight for freedom, but it was an internal conflict that he was in. What's your reflection about this?
It's like the Germans, the German Republic, Germany was united only in the 1870s, but the heroes go further
Right.
before the formation of the German Empire.
Exactly.
So if they have all these myths of their founders, the Japanese also they recall their existence from
Yeah.
Amaterasu, mythical the woman and all the legends that go back 3,000 years, even before the formation of the Japanese Empire. So I I can understand why people will say, why should he be a Filipino hero? There was no Philippines at the time. If you look at heroes, at the pantheon of heroes of other countries, they're not produced by their republics when they were formed or by when they became nations.
I will add to that the
Back.
list.
They look back.
I would add to the list William Tell, the national hero of Switzerland, who's not even historically proven that to exist. He was
Correct.
a legend in the hearts of the people. But you ask that to a Swiss, they will get mad. Oh, for us,
Yes.
William Tell was real. And
Yeah,
I
you
think
don't question those things.
Yeah, I think that's also the place of lapu-lapu, which we will demonstrate now. So Jobbers, we will come back to in the last part, or if there are questions for the last question that we have for you. But this is where I will demonstrate through a video the importance of lapu-lapu in the national history. Because not only because of what he did in Mactan, but what actually are heroes, what he meant for the heroes who fought
Di yata't sa inyong buhay wala nang makikita kundi hirap, dalita, sakit, lumbay, dusat kamisan, at maging sa pangpapahayag sa kalayaan ng Pilipinas sa Kawit, Cavite, 12 ng Hunyo, 1898. Inalala ng mga bayani ng himagsikang Pilipino ang Mactan, ang pagsalakay na sinimulan ni Hernando Magallanes sa Cebu bago siya mapatay ng hukbo ng Haring Kalipulaco sa Mactan. Noon pa man, bandila na ng mga nagtatag ng ating bansa si Lapu-Lapu bilang una sa mga nasa kapuluan na ito na tumindig laban sa panghimasok ng mga dayuhan sa ating bayan. Kahit wala pang Pilipinas sa kanyang panahon, isinali na siya ng mga bumuo ng ating bansa sa kwento ng laban natin para sa ating kalayaan. Ito ang dahilan kung bakit patuloy na mahalaga at hindi mawawala ang kwento ni Lapu-Lapu bilang paalala na kaya nating tumindig sa sarili nating mga paa upang ipaglaban ang ating pamumuhay at ang ating dangal bilang isang bansa.
In national history, it is because our heroes made him important. How can you argue with that? Right? I mean, so, yeah, di ba? So
They were
that's
inspired by his resistance. The name
yes.
Kali Pulaco
Mhm.
hunkers to Kali, a martial art introduced.
Wow.
Well, it's part of the trading with Hindus and the Indic influence in the Philippines. Kali is using Arnis is like Kali, and it doesn't say Caliph. It's not a Caliph.
Yeah, it's a
There's no
caliph
Caliph.
in the Muslim.
It's Kali. It's the martial art Kali, because there was this
Right.
part of their defense was to use stick fighting, and some are made of metal. Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, the segment with Jobers and Ian, this is really about materials. So use of materials that can be found in the Quincentennial Facebook, YouTube, website, Spotify. And I would like to introduce another video to all of you, which basically tells us so that's why we're emphasizing here. Just don't look at the Quincentennial, with the, shall we say, on the surface. You should look at the Quincentennial, look at the materials that were created for it to teach the story of our ancestors, the way that Magellan saw us in 1521, the time of the contact. So we are now going to play a video about the maritime culture of the Filipinos.
Limang-daan taon na ang nakalilipas. Noong 1521, dumaong sa kapuluang magiging Pilipinas ang 3 barko ni Fernando Magallanes. Lumalawak ng Espanya noon bilang kapangyarihang dagat matapos na muling mabawi ang kanilang lupain mula sa mga Muslim at mapagbuklod ito bilang isang kaharian. Ang mga naw ay kilala sa pagkakaroon ng 2 o 3 layag nito na hugis at sulok, nakaiba sa mga galyon na dala ng mga Espanyol sa Pilipinas sa paglipas ng mahigit 3 dekada pa na mas matataas ang layag. Nasubukan ng katatagan ng mga nao sa 3 taong paglalakbay ng Armada de Maluco sa maalon at mabagyong mga karagatan. Ngunit, sa pagdaong nila rito, mas matagal ng thalassocracy o kapangyarihang dagat ang mga bayan at kaharian dito sa Pilipinas. Sinalubong sila ng iba't ibang sasakyang pandagat tulad ng baroto, ang maliliit na bangkang may katig na inimbento ng mga ninuno nating Austronesiano, at ang mga balanghay na tulad ng mga isinalarawan ni Antonio Pigafetta. Gayon din ang mga karakoa na kanilang ginagamit sa pangangayaw o pandirigma. Ebidensya ng sinaunang diplomasyang pandagat ng ating mga ninuno ang isang kasulatang nilikha noong ika-9 na siglo, ang Laguna Copperplate Inscription, kung saan makikita ang malapit na ugnayan ng mga kaharian ng Tondo, Pila sa Laguna, Dewata o Butuan, at Medang sa Java, ngayon sa Indonesia.
Butuan nandyan na kung ang pagbabatayan ay yung Laguna Copper Plate. So 900 AD, nandun na ang Butuan. Ngayon nakikita ko na ang tunay na unang Pilipinas ay yung ugnayan ng Mai at Butuan. Ibig sabihin Mai, Butuan at Laguna area, Tondo. No? So it was isang kapangyarihang dagat, thalassocracy, na ganon din yung Srivijaya. Siyempre, meron silang mga tunay na nahahawakang mga lugar, pero ang pinaka-importante sa kanila, yung ugnayang pandagat, komersyal at kultural.
Dahil sa mayamang kultura sa paglalayag ng ating mga ninuno, nakipagkalakalan sa atin ang mga kapitbahay sa Asia tulad ng mga Chino at maging ang mga taga-India na nagdala rin ng kani-kanilang mga impluensya kasabay ng kanilang mga produkto. Sa panahon ng pagdating ni Magellan, ang Cebu at Mactan ang entrepo kung saan dumadaong ang mga produkto mula sa iba't ibang dako upang doon makipagkalakalan.
Sa Bisaya, na replace yung anito, yung the term anito ng diwata. Bagamat ang tawag nila sa ritual ay mag-anito. So nandun pa rin yung ritual, pero yung katawagan ay Indian, no? Sanskrit. Devata ay Sanskrit. Aside from the fact na tulad ng tinangka kong ipaliwanag, nandoon yung Buddhismo sa Laguna na nandun din sa Butuan. At alam natin na si Tara ay isang napaka-importanting diyosa ng Buddhismo sa silangang Java. At hindi lamang dyan, si Tara ay isang diyosa ng mga manlalakbay.
Sa pagbabalik tanaw natin sa 500 taon ng ating kasaysayan, ating alalahanin na imbis na magkawatak-watak ang ating diwa noon dahil tayo ay pulo-pulo, pinagbuklod ang ating mga pamayanan, kultura at kamalayan ng ating kulturang maritima na dumadaloy sa ating mga ilog at karagatan.
So you see, you can use these materials, lalo na tayong mga teachers, in actually talking about and jump-starting conversations about the Quincentennial. Now, in the interest of time, I would just like to play 2 more videos na sunod-sunod na lang, and then we're going back to our guests and we might get questions from the audience. I'll play something about the tawag dito, yung ginto ng ating mga ninuno, gold of our ancestors. And then also yung sandugo. And there are other videos that you can find. Meron about pagtatato, and then the importance of the Santo Niño, and many, many, many more that you can all use. And Ian later, after the showing of the 2 videos, will tell us about how to access these videos, materials. The wealth of the quincentennial discourse that's happening around the country. So let us share.
Sa pagdating ni Ferdinand Magellan sa Kapuluan noong 1521, napansinan ng kanyang chronicler na si Antonio Pigafetta na sagana ang ating mga ninuno sa ilang bagay. 2 dito ay mga bangkang balangay at mga ginto. Ito ang description niya sa mga taga-Mazawa. Binutasan ng kanilang mga tainga at puno ng ginto. Sa islang iyon ay maraming ginto. Sa talari ni Pigafetta, isinilarawan niya ang rahan ng lupain ng Butuan, Calagan. Mga piraso ng ginto, sinlaki ng mga walnut at itlog ang matatagpuan sa pamamagitan ng pagsasala ng lupa sa isla ng naturang hari na dinala sa mga bangko namin. Yari sa ginto ang lahat ng plato ng naturang hari at ilang bahagi ng kanyang bahay tulad ng sinabi sa amin ng mismong haring iyon. May dalawang malalaki at gintong hikaw siya. Nakasabit ang isang punyal sa kanyang tagiliran. May kahabaan at gawa lahat sa ginto ang hawakan. At gawa sa inukit na kahoy ang sisidlan. Mayroon siyang 3 tuldok ng ginto sa bawat ipin. At tila tinali ng ginto ang lahat ng kanyang ngipin. Kapwa ang bangka at ginto ay may kaugnayan sa ating paniniwalang espiritual. Ang bangka ang nagdala sa kaluluwa sa kabilang buhay tulad ng makikita sa manunggul jar, habang ginto naman ang proteksyon ng katawan o anting-anting upang hindi ito mapasok ng masamang kaluluwa at mapanatili ang mabuting kalooban. Kaya, inilalagay ito sa pinaniniwalaang mga lagusan ng kaluluwa ng tao, sa dulo ng mga daliri sa mga kamay at mga paa at sa mga butas ng ating mukha. Takot di umano ang mga masasamang espiritu sa liwanag ng ginto. Kaugnay din dito ang paggamit ng maskarang yari sa ginto para sa mga yumao.
Bakit yung maliit na estatwa ni Tara ay ginto? Kompletong ginto. Sa palagay mo? Isa yun. Bahagi siya ng kalangitan, no? At siyempre, kaugnay ng araw. Pero at the same time, kahit sa Middle East, importante yung golden. Yung mga pinuno ay may mga suot na ginintuan na damit. Pero it's true na ang Pilipinas ay talagang teritoryo ng ginto. Marami tayong mga panday sa ginto.
Hindi lamang simbolo ang ginto ng yaman ng ating bayan at kultura na naabutan ni Magellan 500 taon na ang nakalilipas, kundi paalala sa atin na may pagpapahalaga ang mga sinaunang Pilipino sa mabuting kalooban. Noong una, akala natin ang barangay ang pinakabatayang unit na politikal ng ating mga ninuno. Ngunit, nilinaw na ito ay isa lamang unit na ekonomiko o grupo na magkakaanak o clan. Ang datu ay pinuno ng clan na ito. Subalit, kung nais ng mga datu na bumuo ng isang mas malakas na politikal na unit, sila ay magbubuklod-buklod bilang mga bayan. Sa Kabisayaan, tinatawag itong banwa. Sa Kailukuhan, ito ay tinatawag na ili. Ang pinuno ng bayan, ang pinuno ng mga datu, ay tatawaging lakan o raha. Upang maisakatuparan nito, sumasailalim ang mga datu sa isang ritual kung saan susugatan nila ang kanilang sarili at ihahalo ang kaunti nilang dugo sa alak upang inumin ng bawat isa. Ang tawag dito ay sandugo. Mula sa salitang isang dugo, na ang kahulugan ay pagkakapatiran. Sa Kabisayaan, ang salita para sa sandugo dito ay pag-aanghod o pagtuturingan sa bawat isa na tulad ng manghod o nakababatang kapatid. Sa Makatwid, ang batayan ng pagbubuo ng bayan ay kapatiran. Malalim ang kahulugan ng sandugo sa ating mga ninuno.
Alam natin na ang sandugo ay isang paraan ng ating lipunan upang sa individual maging magkapatid yung dalawang individual. O sa individual, babae at lalaki, maging magkapatid din. Maaaring hindi sila maging mag-asawa, ngunit ang kanilang katapatan sa isa't isa ay forever. Napaka-importante yung sandugo bilang tanda ng malapit na ugnayan ng tao, no? May katapatan, loyalty, no? Honesty. Isa pang okasyon ng sandugo ay tinatanggap ka ng buong lipunan bayan dahil nakipagsandugo ka sa isang kasapi ng bayan na iyon, particularly pinuno.
Ito ang ritual na nadaluhan ni na Magallanes at chronicler na si Pigafetta nung sila at ang mga kasama ay dumaong sa Kapuluan noong 1521. 500 taon na ang nakalilipas. Gayon din, ginawa din ito ni Miguel Lopez de Legazpi nang dumating sa Bohol noong 1565 at sa Maynila noong 1570. Ayon sa pagkukwento ni Andres Bonifacio sa ang dapat mabatid ng mga Tagalog, gayunman, sila'y pinailalim sa talagang kaugalian ng mga Tagalog na sinaksihan at pinagpatibay ang kanilang pinagkayarian sa pamamagitan ng isang panunumpa na kumuha ng kaunting dugo sa kani-kanilang mga ugat at yao'y inihalot ininom nila kapwa tanda ng tunay at lubos na pagtatapat na di magtataksil sa pinagkayarian. Ito'y siyang tinatawag na Pacto de Sangre ng mga haring si Catuna at ni Legazpi na pinakakatawan ng hari ng Espanya.
Kaya, kung nakipagsundugo sina Pigafetta, ang intensyon ng mga Pinoy, mga Bisaya, ay tanggapin sila doon sa kanilang bayan. Pero hindi ko alam kung ano ang nasa isip ng mga foreigner. Kasi, nung panahon ni Legazpi, ang interpretasyon ng sandugo ni Legazpi ay sinasakop na nila yung mga Filipino. No? Nagkakaroon tayo ng sandugo kasi ano na kayo, subject na kayo ng hari ng Espanya.
Ito ang dahilan kung bakit mahigit 300 taon matapos makipagsandugo ng ating mga ninuno sa mga Espanyol, babawiin ni Gat Andres Bonifacio ang mga ritual na ito upang ipakita na tayong mga Pilipino ang tunay na magkakapatid sa iisang ina, ang inang bayan. Nang itatag niya ang kataas-taasang kagalang-galang na katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan, ginawa niyang sandugo ang ritual ng pagsapi. Ipinapakita nito na ang batayan ng pagsilang at pagbubuo ng ating bansa ay ang pagtuturingan ng bawat Pilipino na magkapatid.
Teachers can use to teach the history of the quincentennial and to help us celebrate this milestone, important milestone event, to show our ancestors. Now, I would like to call again Ian Alfonso to tell us more for a few minutes, and hopefully the next 10 minutes we can use for our open forum, but to briefly show us the quincentennial portal where people can get more webinars information. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Professor Xiao. So kindly search on the URL tab, the www.nqc.gov.ph. So you will be directed here, so kindly proceed to the resources. By the way, the videos shown by Professor Xiao are uploaded on our YouTube channel. Just search on the YouTube National Quincentennial Committee. What I am showing to you here on our website are some of the other materials you can find. We uploaded on the website under downloadables. Actually, it is not yet it's not yet developed. So we have here the quincentennial paper crafts, where you can ask your kids or your students to play on this paper craft. So here's Lapu-Lapu, and then we also have Ferdinand Magellan. So, and then a lot more. So we have here the boats of our ancestors, like the Balangay. So the parts of the Balangay. And then aside from these paper crafts, you may also, this is the
That's my favorite
website. This is the most interesting part of the website, the portal. So here you can watch. You can watch even this conference we are having now will be soon be uploaded here on this portal. Every online lectures or the past lectures of the NQC since 2018 are already uploaded here on the portal. So it is a
Wow.
one-stop
And they can
site
receive
of all.
certificates, huh?
You can generate your own certificate here as long as you finish the
Right.
session. So it will generate its own certificate based on the details you declared on the registration form. So you must first log in or register first, then use your login credentials, and you can now revisit or replay the lectures. So these are composed of lectures not only by the NHCP and NQC but also by UP, other institutions, stakeholders of the NQC. Also
Right.
the monthly lectures of the University of San Carlos are already here. So okay, so
Wow.
you can explore it after this conference. Thank you, Professor Xiao.
Thank you so much, Ian. Huh? I really like the paper dolls. And there's the Boxer Codex of pictures of our ancestors in a calendar. You can also download that for your visual aids for teaching.
Yes.
Now, I hope that Miss Gemma Cruz Araneta is already joining us because I think she has interesting points to consider for the quincentennial. Ma'am Gemma, are you there already? Mm-hmm.
Good morning.
Okay.
Can you hear
Yes.
me?
I miss
Can you
you,
hear
ma'am.
me?
I miss you.
I miss you
Yes.
too. Thank you very much for the honorable mention.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sige, ma'am. Yeah, you want to raise something?
Well, the other professor answered it already because I asked earlier what would have happened if Magellan was not killed by Lapu-Lapu. Di ba? So sinagot na yung nung isang professor kanina. Oo, sabi niya di napaaga yung yung Christianization and colonization. Napaaga. Ngayon, I think it's a good idea to emphasize that Magellan was actually meddling in internal affairs.
Yes.
Diba? Kaya siya napahamak. Oo, at saka hubris nga yun, hubris. Diba? Hindi man lang niya pinag-aralan yung geography kung pwede silang lumapit dun sa isla. Diba? Kahit na siguro naisip niya na, ay nako, ito namang mga natives, wala naman silang mga kanyon. Di ba? Wala naman silang mga baril. At yun nga sinabi niya kay Humabon, manood ka na lang. Huwag ka na sumali, manood ka na lang. Oh, di ba? Hubris. So, paano mo ipapaliwanag yung anggulong yan?
Right. Maraming salamat, ma'am. I have a question for you, ma'am. Kasi we are all generating conversations about the quincentennial. How do we make it more meaningful and in many ways correct to celebrate or to commemorate this milestone?
Well, I think you're doing well because one of the important points here is to show what our ancestors were like before at the point of contact. Di ba? At the point of contact. Because as we grew up and as we learned these things in school, para bang yung history natin nag-uumpisa nung dumating yung mga Kastila dito.
Right.
Di ba? Oo. Tapos sabi nila, wala naman Pilipinas noon. Talaga nga naman wala. Pero katulad ng sabi ni Dr. Noor kahapon, interconnected naman tayo lahat sa Southeast Asia with Asia and with China. Hindi ba?
Right.
Oo. So, kahit na walang Pilipinas, hindi ba tayo magkabuklod-buklod bilang isang bayan? Marami na tayong mga koneksyon sa ating mga kapitbahay, kapitbansa, o kapit-isla. Hindi ba?
And I think people like you, kasi you've been generating, of course, there are some critical points that you're raising in your columns in the Manila Bulletin. We're reading that. And here we are, of course, along the way, all of us, this is all a learning experience for all of us. Kaya nga, ang importante talaga sa akin is we commemorate so that there would be conversations. Ma'am
Well,
Gemma,
It's also a learning experience for me because remember, the first book I wrote was a children's book
Yes.
about lapu-lapu, di ba?
Makisig, yes.
Oo, Makisig.
I love it.
Makisig, the little hero of Mactan.
Mm,
Siyempre, inimbento ko lang yon,
Right.
no? But then, even then, I already knew na wala pang Pilipinas noon. Kaya hindi ko
Right.
naman masasabi na, Lapu-Lapu was defending the Philippines.
Right.
So, yung encounter ni Magellan at Lapu-Lapu, ang sinabi ni Lapu-Lapu, this is my land.
Right, my land, yes.
Oo.
Right,
Pero,
right. Mm.
alam mo ba, na contest kasi yun contest, no? So, third prize lang yung aking makisig. Third prize. Kasi, may nagsabi sa akin, yung mga organizers, yung isang judge ay Australiano. Tapos, ang feeling niya, ay naku, masamang influensya ito sa mga kabataan. Kasi ewan ko ba kung ano ibig na sabihin na masamang influensya. Baka siguro dahil nanalo yung native. No, ewan ko ba. Oo, so naging third prize. So
Thank
anyway,
you so much. Yes.
Yung first two prizes were books by Hilda Cordero Fernando.
Oh, wow. Okay na rin.
Okay na rin,
You were very young
Diba?
at that time. You just won.
Well, I was still in college.
Wala pa pala.
Fourth year college pa ako noon.
Right.
1963. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Sige, thank you. Thank
God
you.
bless. God bless.
God bless you too.
We will now go to the last question, which is, what's the saysay of the quincentennial? What's the saysay of Lapu-Lapu? I think I go first with Sir Jobbers. Sir Jobbers?
Oh, okay. I thought my task was done. Okay, what was that?
Ano pong saysay ni Lapu-Lapu sa atin? Why should we remember?
Lapu-Lapu represents the long history of bravery and heroism that often comes out in the Filipino. I know there are moments in our history when we forget about our self-interests, about ourselves, about our being villages, about our being regions. These are moments that I find very strange as an anthropologist in the Filipino. During Hayan, we unite, during certain events, people power, all that. And then you get to scatter again. It will take psychologists or whatever to explain what's going on. But Lapu-Lapu deserves to be in our pantheon of heroes. I know it's a debate all over that's why there's never a pantheon of heroes. I think President Ramos, attempted a law to create a pantheon of heroes. And you can every congressman, every senator will want 2 or 5 heroes from his district to be in that pantheon. But whether we like it or not, whether you are from the north to the south or the south of the Philippines, there was this event, historic event. It was denigrated in Europe for a long time. But whether they like it or not, there was this guy called Lapu-Lapu who had the temerity, but for us, the bravery to defend his territory. And that is important for us, especially as we face the family of nations. No? Even if we did not have that kind of armaments that Magellan had, this is Lapu-Lapu and his men faced them fair and square. And let's not forget that 2 days or 3 days before Lapu-Lapu, before the Battle of Mactan, Magellan's men actually burned a village in Mactan. It is a short line. It's almost half a sentence. Where they said there were heathens there who did not believe us. They believe in one, and then they burned that. And so that there was a preceding incident that united the chiefs of Mactan, except Zula, to defend territory. And I think for us, as a people in the midst of COVID, we should stop thinking of ourselves, of all this petty politics, and unite to save this nation and move it forward. And let Lapu-Lapu be an inspiration for that. And also our propagandists, see how they utilized, they took the narrative of Lapu-Lapu into the center of the struggle to end Spanish colonial rule and assert Filipino nationhood and identity. And that should, I think, that should be the ultimate purpose of how we should look at Lapu-Lapu. It's an inspiration to all of us, and it should continue to inspire us. Even if so very little is known about it, that battle is known.
Thank you so much. It's finally, I was able to work with the great Jobbers Reyes Bersales from the University of San Carlos. Salamat, sir.
So, may request na ako kina Ian. There's so many Filipino Americans in the United States and Europe, Ian. They're growing up, no? They're Filipino, they look Filipino. There's children of Filipino American, Filipino European families. And they go through, in LA, they're teaching Philippine history there, for example. And the Tagalog language is already recognized there. But I think many of these children will not be able to understand the videos, which are very...
The subtitles, yeah.
Yeah, we could have subtitles in English so that this can be used by by Filipino American teachers in the United States. Because this month is Philippine American History Month in the United States right now.
Right.
So they could access this and help out just a little. Thank you.
We're also working on that. Maraming salamat po. Sir Ian, Secretariat, and I call him, of course, one of the great advocates of the Quincentennial. Ian?
Yes, actually, Dr. Jobbers already mentioned the relevance of Lapu-Lapu. So I think the symbolism of Lapu-Lapu is very strong. Even though, as Dr. Jobbers said, a little is known about Lapu-Lapu, so still, he's an icon of his time. So beyond him, we do not know somebody else from beyond before him that is comparable to his stature in Philippine history. And the fact that the founders of the Filipino nation, the 19th century, elevated him from a mere local icon to a national, to an inspiration, and to inspiration is something that our generation today has to account. So even when you go to the Mount Samat, a memorial to the heroes and martyrs of World War II in Bataan, the biggest part of the base of the memorial to the World War II heroes and martyrs is no other than Lapu-Lapu.
Right.
So Lapu-Lapu himself is an icon of heroism, even though we are still uncertain if he really participated in the battle, but his name is transcendental, and that is the symbolism we are embracing in 2021, that he united even the Muslim Filipinos, our Muslim brothers identified to him. So Lapu-Lapu is not just a Visayan hero or a Cebuano hero or a Mactan hero. We as a Filipino, we inherited his memory as well as those heroes after him. Even though they were not yet Filipinos, but we Filipinos today were the ones who should embrace their memory and be and transform them as part of our identity. We are the inheritors of their memory. They are part of our heritage.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you so much, Sir Jobbers. Siguro, we're 5 minutes over time, but I would like to just add, and I can add a lot of it to it. But I just want to say, let's celebrate the Quincentennial. Let's get to know more about our ancestors. And I will end with my favorite line from the song Bagani by Roel Rostata. Halina't ating isulong at ligawan ang magandang bukas. Ikaw at ako, magkasama tayo. Salubungin ang kinabukasan. Happy Quincentennial, mga Bagani. And this ends the first part of the second day of the National Quincentennial or the International Conference of the Philippine Historical Association on Maritime Southeast Asia. Okay, maraming salamat po and good day to everyone.
Ang mga anting-anting ay pinaniniwalaan noon na proteksyon ng tao laban sa masamang kaluluwa upang mapanatili ang mabuting kalooban. Subalit, para sa hangaway o mandirigmang Bisaya, mag-iibangan nyo ang anting-anting. Imbis na isusuot, ito ay itatuna ng mandirigma sa kanilang mga katawan. Tinatawag ding batek ang mga tattoo na ito. Nakatala sa Boxer Codex ang mga simbolo na tila bulaklak na dapdap na pinaniniwalaang kumakatawan din sa liwanag ng araw. At ang ibon, mga simbolo ito ni Bathala. Makikita na mga simbolong ito ay makikita rin sa mga tattoo ng mga mandirigma sa ibang mga pamayanan sa Timog Silangang Asya at mga isla sa Pasipiko.
Pintado sila dahil ang pagtatato ay may kinalaman sa pagiging magani. Hindi ka pwedeng maging magani kung wala ka pang accomplishment, no? O pinatay. Kaya kung ang tattoo mo ay buong katawan, mag-ingat ka doon sa buong katawan na tinato dahil marami nang napatay na kaaway.
Kung nasusukat ang pagiging bihasa ng isang mandirigma sa dami ng kanyang mga batek, ang isang taong bihasa o may kasanayan sa isang bagay ay makikilala sa ating mga wika bilang batikan.
Pag nilalayan po natin, importante dahil parang sinasabi natin sa the whole world, no, na 500 years na tayo na naging Christians. Yung nangyari, alam po natin, April 14, 1521, yung unang baptism. Gusto ko lang i-underline, no, yung una, yung relationship ng Santo Niño sa first baptism.
The image was taken to the Philippines by the Magellan expedition.
So it was given to Juana as a baptismal gift by Magellan.
Of course, lost for a time because of the unhappy ending of the expedition, rediscovered in 1565 with the Legazpi expedition.
Yung account na makita ni Legazpi, nagpasalamat sa Diyos na para sa kanya ito na yung reward, no, sa hardships nila.
The finding or the common Cebuano term of that is kaplag, pagkakaplag, is the finding of the Santo Niño's image in 1565. Right after that, it ignited the love, or I mean the zeal of the missionaries to evangelize the country because they found a reason to continue the Christianization. Hence, the role of the Santo Niño is very important historically because this very devotion was used by the missionaries to introduce the faith to the people.
Pero the most important event doon is, since then, naikwento na it united both the Spaniards and the natives.
But today, 92% of us are Catholics. We practice probably folk Catholicism, which is a mixture of indigenous native practices and Catholic practices.
It was eventually given and entrusted to the Augustinian friars who at the same time were present in that expedition because they were the ones in charge for the formal evangelization of our country in 1565.
Now, when did this strong devotion begin? In the 1921 event, the 400th anniversary, it's recorded that there was a celebration at the Basilica. But hindi siya ganun laganap spread all over. It started, I think, in 1965 during the 400th anniversary of the evangelization of the Philippines, yung 400th anniversary ng arrival ni Legazpi, when there was an international conference, international event, and there was a 1 week-long series of events, including the first Sinulog contest. Because Sinulog used to be like caroling in house to house. In 1965, and then in 1981, lumabas yung Sinulog Festival with a grand parade that created the whole event that internationalized and it created whole body of celebrations for the whole week. So, 1965 and the 1981 Cebu Festival when it started.
Kung may nakikita po tayo na mga reasons why bakit malapit sa Pinoy ang Santo Niño devotion. They accepted the faith and they allow the faith to have a meaning in their lives.
Before God, we should believe that like a loving parent, no? At bata tayo, hindi niya tayo pabayaan, no?
It is always an observation to us as Filipinos that we love children, no? And because in our love of the presence of children in the family, kaya ang ano natin, yung attention natin, yung pagpapakita natin ng pagmamahal is always with the children.
And if in the Bible, because of sin, yung mga tao natakot sa Diyos, no? When God reveals Himself as a child, yung dating ba, hindi tayo natakot sa bata, no? Yung ninyo kasi attractive, no, guwapo, yung cute, no? Instead na matakot tayo, parang we're drawn, no? Na lumapit.
Na malapit sa kanyang puso, madaling puntahan, madaling hingan ng mga panalangin. So, the natural ability of the person to connect with the child.
At dahil nasa siya bata at dahil nasa yung inaawit natin na batubalanin sa gugma, like a magnet, it draws us to Himself. As the expression suggests, the batubalanin is a magnet, no? It draws us to Him. No? Kaya nga yung attitude ng Filipino, pag nakita mo yung bata, hindi ka umatras, no? Yung lumalapit ka sa bata. Yun din yung pagtingin ko dito na in many ways, the Niño unites various people, no? At hindi mawala yung mga away-away, pero in general, it brings unity to the country.
Ika-10 ng Disyembre 2018, namangha ang lahat sa pambansang kasuotan ni Binibining Catriona Elisa Magnayon Gray na ipinambato niya sa Miss Universe 2018 na nagkakaisa sa iba't ibang elemento ng multi-etniko, multilingual at multikultural na bansa na tinatawag nating Pilipinas. Luz Viminda, magdiwang, lumaban at pagyamanin. Pinagkakaisa rin nito ang iba't ibang talento mula sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Kung kadalasan ang naiisip lamang natin na pambansang kasuotan ay yung kilala bilang Filipiniana, inisip at hiniraya ni Catriona at ng kanyang trainer na si Architect Carlos Buendia Jr. na katawanin ang tatlong malalaking grupo ng kapuluan na bumubuo sa ating inang bayan. Para sa Luzon, ang diwa ng pinakamahabang Pasko sa pamamagitan ng parol ng Pampanga na may mga kulay ng ating pambansang bandila na dinisenyo ni Gerson Dema Vivas ng Coronadal at ng manlilikha ng parol Pampanga na si Eric B. Kiwa ng San Fernando. Para naman sa Visayas, ang diwa ng kanilang mga mandirigma ang binuhay ni Dema Vivas sa bodysuit ni Catriona. Batay ang mga disenyo ng damit sa depiksyon ng mga mandirigmang Bisaya na matatagpuan sa Boxer Codex noong 1590. Ang mga batek o tattoo ay tulad ng mga anting-anting na proteksyon ng kaluluwa ng mandirigma mula sa kasamaan at kumakatawan din sa kagitingan, tagumpay at kapangyarihan ng ating mga bagani. At para naman sa Mindanao, ang kalinangan ng mga lumad na tiboli na ipinahayag ng kanilang mga habing tinalak na ang mga disenyo ay binubuo nila mula sa kanilang mga panaginip. Ang disenyong batek at mga abubot na tiboli ay dinisenyo rin ni Dema Vivas habang ang bota naman na nagtataglay ng mga habing Mindanawan ay dinisenyo ni Jojo Bragay sa tulong ni Ardel Presentacion. Sa likuran ng kanyang kasuotan ay isang obra ng pinagsaluhang kasaysayan at kalinangan ng mga katutubo, Muslim at Kristiyano sa tradisyon ng mga obra ni Botong Francisco at nagtataglay ng mga imahe ng Pahiyas, Nuestro Padre Jesus Nazareno, Sampaguita, Kulintang, Bayanihan, Moriones, mga eksena sa Dinagyang, trahedya at katapangan sa Marawi, waling-waling, butanding, jeepney, pandango sa ilaw, singkil, tinalak, sinulog, haribon, higantes, maskara, South Sea Pearls, Bulkang Mayon at Bulkang Taal, ilog sa ilalim ng lupa, mga nakaligtas sa Yolanda, Kalabaw, Payo sa Banawe, Chocolate Hills, Masjid di Maukom o mas kilala bilang Pink Mosque, Bulol at Manunggul Jar. Gayon din ang 500 taon ng kagitingan at tagumpay mula sa labanan sa Mactan ni Lapu-Lapu hanggang sa partisipasyon ng kababaihan sa pagtindig para sa kalayaan tulad ni Gabriela Silang at Tandang Sora, ang pagbubuo ng nasyon sa pamamagitan ng mga sinulat at eroismo ni Jose Rizal at ng himagsikang Pilipino na sinimulan ng katipunan at nagbunsod ng ating proklamasyon ng kalayaan mula sa 300 taong kolonyalismo sa Kawit Cavite at ang pagwawagayway ng ating pambansang bandila. Nakapaligid sa obra ay ang disenyong barok ng mga simbahang ipinagmamalaki bilang UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Gawang disenyo sa pukpok o brass metal craft ni Tomas Ramirez ng Pampanga. Nakapaligid din ng ilang kataga mula sa ating pambansang awit sa baybayin, lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig di ka pasisiin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. Si Justin Aliman nang siyang pangkalahatang nag-ayos sa estilo ng pambansang kasuotan na ipinambato ni Catriona. Sa pagpapakita ng labanan sa Mactan at sa itsura ng ating mga ninuno bago dumating ang mga Espanyol, lalo na ang mga batik ng mga pintados ayon sa Boxer Codex, maging ang pagpapakita ng ilang elementong Kristiyano, ay sinalamin na ng kasuotan na ito ni Catriona ang diwa ng paggunita sa Quincentenaryo o 500 taon ng kagitingan at tagumpay sa Mactan, ang pagpapakilala ng Kristyanismo sa Pilipinas, at ang unang pag-ikot ng tao sa mundo sa 2021. Kaya naman, ang National Quincentennial Committee ay sumulat agad kay Catriona isang araw matapos niyang isuot ang kasuotan upang ipakita ito sa mga Pilipino. Sa tulong ng Pambansang Komisyong Pangkasaysayan ng Pilipinas, Embahada ng Pilipinas sa Thailand at ng Philippine Airlines, dali-daling nayuwi ang mahalagang kargo upang maitanghal sa pagpapasinaya ng paggunitang pang-quincentenaryo noong ika-21 ng Disyembre 2018. Binalikan ni Catriona ang kultura at kasaysayan sapagkat nais niyang sa paglakad niya sa entablado sa harap ng daigdig, hindi lamang niya suot ang pangalan ng Pilipinas, ngunit dala niya ang bigat ng mga tagumpay, trahedya at higit sa lahat, ang kadakilaan ng sambayanang Pilipino. Kaya naman, sa tagumpay ni Catriona na makoronahan ng Miss Universe 2018, ipinakita rin natin sa kanya ang ating pagkakaisa at pagmamahal. Mensahe ni Catriona sa bawat sasaksi sa kasuotan niyang ito, ang pamanay pagyamanin, ang bayan ay mahalin. Ito ang Pilipinas.